Oh, Canada, our home and native World Cup preview. We're previewing every team going to the World Cup, which for the first time since 1986 and for the second time ever includes my neighbor to the north, Canada. They are the surprise team at this World Cup. They are the underdog at this World Cup, and it starts with how they got there, because CONCACAF has 2 rounds to qualifying. That's in North Central America, in the Caribbean, and select teams from Northern South America. It's the qualifying area in the Western Hemisphere that's not South America. Its qualifying has 2 rounds. The first, a big fancy group stage, and the second, a big fancy group stage. This first round includes such distinguished teams like Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, and so on and so forth. Canada had to participate in that level of qualifying for reasons we will get to later. Canada, unsurprisingly, was able to sweep this round of qualifying by winning their group. They won all 4 matches. After winning their group, they had to play against another group winner, which actually turned out to be Haiti, who is not a particularly bad team. Haiti's been to the World Cup before. They are certainly competent. They show it at the Gold Cup consistently, but Canada beat them. Now, mainly because Haiti couldn't get a lot of its players into Canada. This is still when intense COVID travel protocols were in effect in Canada, and so Haiti was missing a significant number of players, and that could have explained the 4-0 aggregate win for Canada. Oh, I'll be streaming a watch along to every match at the World Cup at the Twitch link in the description. See you there, Buster. Nonetheless, Canada had finally made the final round of qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in forever. And it started okay. I mean, it's not like they lit the world on fire. Canada drew 4 of its first 5 matches. Its ability to not lose was incredibly important, but their only win was at home against El Salvador. Now, 2 of these draws were Mexico and the United States away. Not terrible results, but they were par for the course. And then they exploded. Canada won 7 of its next 8 matches. That's ridiculous. That's insane. Canada hadn't even made this round of qualifying for the World Cup, the final round, in over 20 years. 5 qualifying cycles. And then all of a sudden it's just, we beat Costa Rica, we beat Mexico, Honduras, the United States, El Salvador. We lost to Costa Rica, but we blew out Jamaica, so life's all good. It was a crazy run. Not only did it include wins over the United States and Mexico, Canada only conceded 3 goals over the entire run of 8 matches while scoring 16. It is impossible for me to overstate how surprising it was for Canada to just turn into the best team in a continent that it essentially had never been the best team of before. Canada lost their final match, but they'd already clinched qualification at that point. They'd clinched essentially finishing first, which makes them the only team to go to the World Cup from CONCACAF that had to play in that first round. The goal scoring in the qualifying is insane. Kyle Larin scored 13. Jonathan David scored 9. Alphonso Davies scored 5. Lucas Cavallini scored 5. You probably don't even know who that is. He's a striker for Canada. And all 4 of those guys scored more than or the same amount as any top scorer for any other team that qualified for the World Cup from this section. Pulisic had 5 goals for the US. That's the only person that matched their top 4. And they got to play in the first round as well, but it didn't make that much of a difference. That's a ton. And the end result is Canada is going to the World Cup for the second time ever. The first time in the living memory of, according to the analytics on YouTube anyways, the majority of people watching this video. You're over 36, I apologize. Canada made it in 1986, but there's a caveat to that. They made it to the World Cup in Mexico. They were qualifying without Mexico in qualifying because Mexico already qualified as the host. So this is the first time in a full CONCACAF qualifying that Canada has ever made it. And I cannot express to you how out of nowhere it was, because you'd have to be an absolute psycho to look at every CONCACAF qualifying section between 2022 and 1986. I did do that. The brief summary is that Canada has sucked. So CONCACAF has always done a final group stage essentially to decide everything, and Canada couldn't even make it to that. They finished a point behind Honduras 4 years ago in the second to last round. Same round in 2014 qualifying, point behind Panama. In 2010, they got 2 points in 6 matches against Jamaica, Mexico, and Honduras. 2006, bottom of the group, 5 points behind Guatemala. 2002, smoked by Trinidad and Tobago in Mexico, finishing with 5 points in 6. This is not in the final round. This is the round before the final round. And 1998, they dominated a group with El Salvador, Panama, and Cuba to make the final round of qualifying, and then they sucked. They finished last, 4 points behind El Salvador, 6 points behind Costa Rica, 8 points behind Jamaica. Now, 1994 was actually the closest they've gotten to qualifying for a World Cup while Mexico wasn't there. They did make the final round. It was only 4 teams. They finished second, which sent them to a playoff that they promptly lost in heartbreaking fashion to Australia. It was 4-1 in a penalty shootout. But if you know something about the 94 World Cup, there was a team missing from CONCACAF qualifying, the United States. They were hosting the tournament. So still a caveat, still an asterisk. And of course, the section after they made the World Cup in '86, they did not make it to the final round. They were eliminated in a previous playoff by Guatemala on away goals, of course. In fact, the last time Canada made the World Cup, the final round was only 3 teams, and you just played 4 matches, and Canada finished ahead of Honduras and Costa Rica. The United States wasn't good yet. So Canada really did set the trend. But they are back, and even as abysmal as that trip down history lane makes them look, the signs were actually there. Because for the first time since 2007, Canada made the semifinals of a Gold Cup. That's the championship of this continent. And they did so in rather impressive fashion. They beat Haiti and Martinique to get to the knockouts, even though they lost to the US. They had to play against Costa Rica, who they beat fairly handily. And then they matched up with Mexico in a very good match in the semifinal. Only undone by a Hector Herrera Ache scoring in the 99th minute, 9th minute of stoppage time. And yeah, that hurts. But Canada was close. And Kyle Larin scored 3 goals in this tournament as well. The guy is irrepressible with Canada. But he is not the player to watch on this team, because now that you know that it's miraculous they are here, you should know why. And the why is mainly Jonathan David. You might have been expecting Alphonso Davies in this spot, but he was actually hurt for half of qualifying. He only played 7 of the 14 matches in qualifying. Jonathan David, on the other hand, shouldered the load. Born in Brooklyn, but he moved to Ottawa when he was 6 years old, Jonathan David is just like the best Canadian striker ever already. He's 22. He was born in 2000. Horrifying. That is horrifying. How old am I? You think I can change that? Subscribe if you want to. Despite his young age, he has 34 caps and 22 goals already for the Canadian national team. And also, Alphonso Davies plays left back. He can't put the ball in the back of the net with the same experience as somebody like Jonathan David, who plays as a striker for Ligue 1 Lille. He's been there for 2 years there. He has 89 appearances and 37 goals. This year, he's cooking. 14 games played, 9 goals and 3 assists for a top-level French team. Jonathan David is honestly a prime candidate to be a breakout star, because even though some of you might know who he is, he's not a household name yet or mentioned in the same breath as the best young strikers in the world, which he's quickly working his way towards. We're talking about somebody who is the National Men's Player of the Year for his country as a teenager in 2019. And while Alphonso Davies gets the headlines and he's on all the thumbnails, he might even be on this one, Jonathan David is legit and is the #1 reason Canada is at the World Cup. Now, the team around him is going to be arrayed in a way that tries to utilize the 3 greatest assets for Canada. And amazingly, none of them are ice hockey. Now, the coach for Canada is brilliant. His name is John Herdman. He cut his teeth coaching in the women's game, and that's how he ended up getting the men's job. And what he has done with the team is not only instill belief, but a system that creates something that is greater than the sum of its parts. I've looked through the formations they played throughout qualifying, and they do like a good 4-2-3-1 and a good 4-4-2, but Canada experimented exclusively with a 5-2-3 in their 2 tune-up friendlies before this World Cup, a loss to Uruguay and a win over Qatar. That formation, that 5-2-3, looks like the best option for them because it maximizes their strengths and tries to minimize their weaknesses. The strength would be having Alphonso Davies behind Jonathan David and Kyle Larin in a front 3 triangle that essentially isolates the talent that Canada has. The back 7 essentially forms a block that provides some opportunities to break, but obstructs and obscures what the opposition is trying to do. This front 3 aren't the only options on the team. Tajon Buchanan's a bright, creative player that played in almost every qualifying match. Junior Hoylett is at a second resurgence in his career and is still a creative force for this team. And the guy who bagged a bunch of goals in qualifying, Cavallini, is a worthy backup option on the front line. Like a lot of players, Cavallini does play in the MLS. He plays for Vancouver. But the team is a bit hodgepodge. The center backs, Alistair Johnson, Kamal Miller, and Steven Vittoria, at least in the friendly against Uruguay, these guys, they're not of the top level. They play for Montreal, Toronto, and Chaves in the Portuguese league. Maybe it's Derek Cornelius at center back. He plays in the Greek league. The only potential standout I see that plays in this back seven at all is Steven Eustachio. I think he is a really bright player, and when I've watched him play, he has great technical ability and swagger, creativity. But even down to the fullbacks, Adekugbe and Richie Lorea, this is a team that when they play for their club teams, they are different players. When they play for Canada, they're better. I don't know how to explain it. All I can tell you is I've watched a lot of the Canadian national team. And unlike a lot of these teams, I can say with confidence, more than the vast majority of you guys, I have watched these players in this team. I'll tell you right now, looking at the talent on the roster Canada will bring, it's right at the bottom of what's going to be at this World Cup. And yet, they have something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fact that their captain's 39, Atiba Hutchinson's finally leading his team to a World Cup. They're a thin team that on paper should be outclassed unless their few stars make plays to make up for it. That is a ton to ask. So their chances to get out of the group, they're low, obviously. They have to channel whatever they had in that ridiculous run to get them into the World Cup, those 8 matches where they won 7 of them, and they have to do it again against better teams. The truth is, we honestly don't know how they will react to being on this stage. Their stars are young, and the rest of the team technically shouldn't be able to hang with Belgium, Croatia, or really even Morocco. But when Canada just belts out in the stadium for the first time in 36 years, all that's gonna fade away. It's not gonna matter. They're gonna be the underdog. Everybody's gonna be hoping they do well. And despite the now budding rivalry between the US and Canada on the pitch, I hope they do well too. They shouldn't be able to do anything, but they absolutely could. They won the qualifying group, and that says something. And perhaps most dangerously, they have nothing to lose. You, however, have plenty to lose because you've just watched this video, maybe. And there's a whole playlist that previews every team in the World Cup. And you feel like you're missing out on a lot of that knowledge. So you got to click right there to make sure you get the knowledge going, you know?